You're exactly right. If you try to force a secret out of somebody, it makes them clam up even more. It makes them less willing to share when you need them more willing to share. It makes them less trustful when you need them more trustful. It makes them less loyal when you need them to be more loyal. So force very rarely ever works in any condition, but it especially doesn't work in the collection of human intelligence.
And I mean, my way of going through the world is to use kindness and to use compassion and to use a healthy dose of humility to build connection. And generally, I'm not trying to wrestle secrets out of people in the course of my day. I'm trying to build out my network. I'm trying to build out, good people around me. But it sounds like it's the same process, perhaps with a slightly different motive. Like, what works to build relationships also works for wrestling secrets out of, someone that you're targeting who's got something that you need to know, right?
I would say the answer is yes and no to that, right? So your approach of kindness and sincerity and humility it's an effective approach, but it's an untrained approach. We break everything at CIA into trained and untrained. And trained people are people who are equipped with specific skills. Untrained people are people who maybe they've gone to the school of hard knocks, or maybe they've had some life experience, so they're better at something than someone else, but they're still untrained, not as good as you would be if you were trained. Think about your neighborhood diver, or like the person in the high school track and field team. They might be really naturally fast, but they're not fast enough to beat someone from a low grade college university. You know what I mean? So that's what we're looking for. So to put a more professional term in place, I would say that the tool that you use in communication to build a relationship is something called rapport. You're building rapport. Rapport is the currency of a relationship. Sometimes you build rapport with kindness. Sometimes you build rapport with humility. Other times you build rapport with punishment. Sometimes you build rapport with confrontation. Sometimes you build rapport with avoidance. There's lots of different ways that you actually gain rapport. And when you have rapport, you have leverage in a relationship. It's just like any kind of fiat currency you can imagine.
And I'm guessing each strategy for building rapport is going to differ on who you're directing it towards.
Exactly right, man. Nail on the head.
How do you sort of flesh out when you're meeting someone for the first time the way that they communicate best, or the way that they build rapport best? We like, the old Wall Street thing was, you find the fanciest, hottest restaurant, you show up with the corporate card, you spend a bunch of money, everyone gets hammered, and hopefully at the end of that, there's some rapport built throughout this crude, sort of idiotic process, right? And now my rapport building's slightly different. But that's the toolkit that was handed to me in my 20s. Take this person to a restaurant, get them hammered, and at the end of it, just mention that, you're at work for an investment bank, and hope for the best, right? That's my training. And then sort of as I got older, I genuinely became more interested in people. I mean, I just genuinely take this kind of interest in, hey man, we're all up to some cool stuff. What are you up to today? Well, whoever it is. And that's opened so many doors for me magically, where I feel like I walk through my day and everyone kind of recognizes you, remembers you. And it's this positive way of going about things. So I think I've just stumbled into my strategy. What are the techniques and strategies for building rapport? How do you go about that? You meet someone for the first time.
Yeah. So there's the big thing to understand is that rapport is something everybody can build. Rapport is a currency for sure. However, the currency comes in different denominations, and sometimes the currency comes in different, like a different foreign currency. It still has value, but there's a difference between the yen and the dollar, right? So you have to adjust for cultural nuance too. So the easiest way that I would say this is to consider when you meet someone new, you have to understand that you're not actually meeting that person. You're meeting the public presence of that person. You're meeting a persona that person has spent their entire life cultivating specifically for public use. It's something we call a public life. You have a voice that you use when you're on the podcast. You have a completely different voice that you use with your friends. You have a completely different voice that you use with your parents. You have cultivated each of those voices over time. The same thing is true with how we interact with people. We have different types of personas that we use to engage with different people. So when you meet a stranger, they're in stranger persona. They don't know you. They don't trust you. They don't like you. Right now, at best, you're net neutral. More than likely, you're actually running a debt already. You're net negative because you're distracting them. You're taking them away from something they care about. You're threatening them in some way just by being in physical proximity of somebody, because that's a human nature thing. So in order to understand how to build rapport with any individual, you have to first understand that the person you're sitting across the table from when you meet them for the first time isn't really who you're going to build rapport with. It's a shell. It's a protective persona. We call it public life. Right behind that public life, when you get through that shell, there's a whole different person. And that person actually has motivations. They have vulnerabilities. They have life dreams. They have goals. They have pain. They have excited ideas. They have sad ideas. But the public persona that you meet right out of the gates doesn't have any of those things. So you've got to understand that it's going to take a little bit of time. I don't mean hours or days. It's going to take minutes, 7 minutes, 4 minutes to crack through that public persona enough that you can start getting to know their private persona, or what we call the private life, which is the real life of the individual.
This is going, this is the elevator. Oh, it's pretty warm out today. To, you know what? I had this barbecue at my house and my kid knocked over the fucking grill and then the whole thing lit on. It's where you go from there to there.
Exactly.
It's funny because
it's hard to do that. It's hard to do that when you're going from the 7th floor to the 4th floor.
Right. You need a little bit more time.
Yep.
I think people have this ability, maybe by the way they were raised, they saw how their parents acted, or they picked up on a TV show or movie where they saw how someone could just build quick rapport with people. And I mean, I think it's what you're saying, to move from public life to private life, to be able to move through that effectively and quickly, whether you're trying to, get a business deal done, meet a new friend, or, wrestle a secret out of somebody for the state. I mean, that's a superpower, right? I mean,
I would agree.
Yeah.
It's a superpower, but luckily it's a superpower that you can learn. There's a systematic process to learn that superpower. You're dead right. There are some people who have learned it or who were born with it. And let's be frank, the people who have that power, it didn't come easy. There was something in their life that they didn't like, and they had to learn that skill in order to overcome the thing that they didn't like. Mom didn't pay attention to them. Dad was too busy at work. They were stuck all day with a nanny. They were in and out of foster homes. They had to deal with, sexual harassment, or they were marginalized because they were a person of color. Who knows? They learned superior communication, not because life was grand and easy, but because life was hard. And they needed communication in order to alleviate some of that pain.
Through communication, what do you get? You get connection. You get to be seen by other people. Wow.
You can manipulate other people. You gain leverage. You gain something called information superiority. You can be underestimated and over-deliver. There's all sorts of benefits that come to the superior communicator. And especially when you're the skinny kid or the fat girl or the dyslexic chubby kid, you're looking for any advantage you can get. And sometimes being able to make people smile, laugh, and cutting through that public persona quickly sometimes that's exactly what you need so that you're not made fun of, ostracized, or ridiculed anymore.
Sure. Well, that's why I'm on TikTok, everybody. That's why we're doing this. Come on. Yeah, I mean, I have such a innate desire I can't just go to Walgreens and buy a Gatorade. Like I have to engage in some way with someone in the store. And like, I like to think of it as this little game. Like, let's see what funny thing can we make happen today. And for me, it's usually like I'll ask hey, there's only one muscle milk left in the refrigerator. I need that muscle milk. Like we need that protein, baby. And the guy will laugh, and then he'll start telling me something, that I didn't know about the store or why the bottle gets stuck back there. We have a laugh. I buy the muscle milk, and I feel like I just drank a espresso. Like I'm like, that felt good. That just fun breaking. Everyone uses the phrase breaking frame, or I don't know if you guys, did we steal that from the CIA? Breaking frame? Is that yours?
No, that one's not ours, but go ahead.
It's probably from someone else, but it's just like the ability to pierce through the humdrum. What I'm learning from you now is public life. I get joy out of breaking through public life, probably in all the wrong times. Like, dude, just buy the muscle milk. You don't need to do this. Can't you just buy the thing and move on? But I saw how, number one, I feel a sense of joy with that momentary connection and laughter. And I just feel like I'm honing some skill, like improvisation or humor, or just, I don't quite know why I do it, but let me tell you, every day I walk down the street, I go, what fun little thing can we try? What fun little thing can we try now? And I guess now we're thinking about it, my excuse is, well, I'm honing my social skills, right?
So let me give you let me shine a CIA light on your story.
Please. This will be the only time I would enjoy a CIA light being shined on me, for the record. Okay.
Focus that right on me like an interrogation. Let's do this. Bring it on.
It's just for the podcast.
So the joy that you're describing, it's not the same thing as the joy that you get when a joyful moment actually happens. Like if you have a child, or if you get married, or if somebody gives you a pat on the back, it's a different kind of joy. What you're actually describing in your scenario is something we call a dopamine rush. So if your body is releasing a chemical surge of dopamine into your system, essentially because you put yourself into something that your body cognitively perceived to be a threatening situation, a risky situation. You approached a stranger, engaged a stranger, looking for a specific outcome, knowing that by trying to get that outcome, you were risking the opposite thing. And then when you avoided the opposite and got the outcome you wanted, then you got this flood of dopamine hit. And it must happen to you often if you do this multiple times throughout your week or throughout your day. You're basically putting yourself into a risk-based situation, and then you win the risk, so you get the dopamine rush. Very similar to what a gambling addict does. Very similar to what a sex addict does.
Good.
They put themselves on the edge, and then when they win the risk, that's what is their actual reward. The muscle milk wasn't the reward. The Gatorade wasn't the reward. What you needed was at Walgreens, but it wasn't in the cooler. It was in the fact that you could control the environment and go in and essentially manipulate the behavior of a person. Do you have a history of ADHD?
I don't know. Maybe. Could we get... if we get diagnosed on this, feel free to send me all the pills. I'll try anything once.
So the reason I ask is because there's also there's a correlation between attention deficit and people of high social capability. Because what ends up happening is your mind works so fast. People think ADHD is like a negative thing because it's been diagnosed as a negative thing according to the public school system. In fact, ADHD is the ability it gives you the ability to connect disparate thoughts together. Things that nobody else would ever imagine connecting together. like Korean food and Mexican food, hybrid. You know who came up with that idea? Somebody who was ADHD. No trained, cognitively normal chef would ever think to put kimchi into a burrito. It wouldn't cross through their mind. It takes someone of like exceptional cognitive stretch, like an ADHD person, to be able to make that connection. So if you're literally stepping out of your apartment, like you described, or your house, and you're going down the street wondering to yourself, what can I do today? What can I do to kind of challenge myself today? What can I do to get a rise out of somebody? What can I do to take a risk, win the risk, and get my high, right? And I have no doubt that the reason you were on Wall Street was because you don't see risk as risk. You see risk as fun. You see risk as opportunity.